Are joining. We're talking isolation. We've got Lucy Cuneo on and Catherine Fortunato and Lizzie Fortunato. We're gonna let all the people join. All right, cool.
This is my first time doing this.
Lucy, for those of you who don't know, is based in Charleston. But I'm wondering, have you been out of the house much in Charleston?
No, I've been trying to do a walk every day. But I would say that people are not as aware of social distancing here. So I feel like the only one who's trying to like avoid people on the street.
Really?
Just bike right by you. So I've even sort of like been cutting that down a little bit.
Yeah, I was the same. Before we left New York, I was kind of the same way. Like, people were just like strolling down the sidewalk, and I was like, I'm gonna walk down the center of the street where
I know, and I like hate being the morality police, but I'm also really anxious. So
no, we all have reason to be anxious.
Yeah,
fair.
totally.
We have somebody on from South Carolina, Lucy, by the way.
Oh, fabulous.
Miranda from South Carolina, thank you for joining. It's the weakest link. Like, everybody can be good, and if one person doesn't do their job of being good, then like it screws up the entire solution.
No one so I was telling the girls that I went to my pregnancy appointments today, and no one was wearing a mask or gloves.
Really? But are they limiting how many people are allowed in the room? And
They're technically doing that, but I think because they squeezed me in because it was last minute, there were a couple people in the waiting room.
Yeah. Catherine and I had a doctor's appointment last week. Like, we've since gotten an OB in Delaware, and the doors are locked. They only let one person at a time, and you have to get your temperature taken before you're allowed in the room.
Right.
So, like, it feels pretty stringent, which I actually liked. I was like, great.
Totally. Yeah. I think that's the kind of
amazing. And we've got Susanna on, who's an amazing friend, supporter, and fan, who is from Macon, Georgia, originally from North Carolina. So I feel like the Southeast is well represented.
Good.
So without further ado, let us start. Again, for all of you who are just joining, we've got Lucy Cuneo on the other side. Lucy's not only a friend, but she's also the master. I didn't know how to articulate your bio. She's a wedding photographer. She's a blogger. She's an entertainer. She's a stylist.
All over the place.
She just launched an amazing platform called The Wedding Lab, which is a site that's dedicated to brides, which is obviously relevant as we talk about people who are postponing wedding plans. Yep. And then on top of everything, she has a toddler with a second baby due 8 weeks from now in June. So we really wanted to talk to her, as Lizzie and I are expecting our first babies in July, about, selfishly, a little bit of advice for us because we've done nothing to plan. So a little bit of advice, as well as just how she has been managing pregnancy, a newly launched business, and sort of quarantine all at the same time, which is a challenge for all of us. So I'll let you kick it off with the first question. Cool. Lucy, welcome. We're so excited to chat with you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
No, this is so fun. Okay, so we have like a lot of nitty gritty to get into, but before we do that, just because you're like the wedding queen, and Catherine and I got married a few years ago, and we were both the type of people who had a lot of fun planning our weddings. Like, I didn't find it too stressful. I really enjoyed it. But I'm wondering, tell us a little bit about your wedding briefly, and then if you were to do it again now, all these years later, is there anything you would be doing differently?
Okay, I got married in 2013, so I was a wee pup when Will and I got married. We actually eloped because he had a green card issue, and then we planned a wedding and had it sort of 6 months later. And I knew nothing about weddings. Even though I'd been in the industry, I'd really only photographed a handful at that point, and so it was so foreign. And I would say that the one memorable error, which is the first thing that I always talk to brides about, is hair and makeup. Because I love my mother-in-law. I'm so blessed. She's wonderful. But her best friend, also lovely, is a hairstylist. And she just decided it would be such a good idea for him to do my hair. And we didn't practice. And I think I was a little hungover, if I'm being really honest, like all the excitement of the wedding day. And I ended up with like a parliamentary wig. And
you have a lot of hair. So that's very sensible.
It was like teased up. And then little tight curls underneath. And then he put this like clip right here. And I remember turning around to face all my cousins who were all so polite. And they couldn't help but say, like, I think we need to like bring it down a notch. It was so bad. So I wish that I had just taken it out at that point, but it was too far gone. And I'd say that from a vanity perspective, it really affected my wedding photos. So as a wedding photographer, now I always say that it's so critical to look like yourself, and get a hair and makeup trial. And if you're not going to do hair and makeup, you've got to practice and find a way to like take some photos just so that you know that it's translating. Because it doesn't matter in the long run. Like, we had the most incredible time, but you know, you just don't feel like you
look at those pictures and you don't feel like
looking like yourself is so important. Like,
it's important. It is
a pretty version of yourself.
Lizzie waited to go bleach blonde until right after her wedding, because even though it's been a great for her for the last 3 years, until now, we kept saying,
I've been like really dying to dye my hair blonde. That's a tongue twister. But my mom and my sister were both like, wait and do it after the wedding. Like, you're gonna regret it if you have bleach blonde hair on your wedding day. So I listened.
Right. No, so that's a really critical one. I will say, like, one quick thing that we did right, and I attribute this all to my mom, and it's the core principle of the Wedding Lab. So I'm like, it's really what we're focusing on the whole way through, is focus on guest experience. Awesome. So my mom planned this unbelievable event for a very small group of people, and that's how we used our budget. And I will say that it's sort of gone down in history as like a wonderful family wedding, just because people felt so seen and looked after. And that's really, I think, such a critical part of planning a wedding. And I'm sure you guys did the most fabulous job.
Well, both of our wedding, mine was 100 people destination in Portugal, and Lizzie's was 150 upstate in New York. But I mean, neither of us were wanting, 200-300 person weddings. And I understand it's personal. You've got to sometimes satisfy cousins and things like that, which we did not do. But having it be so personal and so guest oriented, it's a gift to the bride and groom if everybody else is happy.
Yeah, so, I feel like I got to talk to everyone, which is the best.
Yeah.
Yes, it feeds the energy.
Totally. Okay, so building off of that, you've obviously built this incredible business focused on weddings. And Catherine and I, just through friends and a bunch of customers too, who have been like looking at wedding jewelry. We know that weddings are getting postponed right now.
And some are even getting canceled. You've been invited to a few that have been canceled.
It's kind of just like reimagined as very different things, like small dinners in the fall or things like that, because we really don't know when you can start getting like big groups of people together again. But I'm wondering, how this has caused you to like kind of pivot the Wedding Lab, or what developments you're doing, and then also just any feedback or advice you have for brides. And it can be from the emotional to the logistical. Like, would you suggest people try and get their money back for things, or what recommendations do you have?
Sure. Those are all such good questions. And I think that honestly, it's all still very unknown. But from my perspective, we postponed the Wedding Lab launch because things are shifting so much because of COVID. Distribution chains are getting interrupted. So even if, for example, like all of these small flower distributors are going out of business, then you're not gonna be able to get the exact flower that you were originally after. And then you might consider silk flowers, but if you haven't gotten them from China already, like they're probably not. So just rethinking, I know that was like verbal diarrhea, but rethinking.
No, it's true.
From your design perspective, like just, I think pinning down an overall vibe versus a really specific vision of like, I need a pink peony and X and Y, I think will lead to a happier result in the long run. I think that ultimately, these couples are going to be tested and they're going to have to be as flexible as possible. So that's a really critical thing. We definitely have seen, obviously, all of our spring and summer weddings have been postponed to the fall and the next spring. I do think that there's still a possibility that a lot of the fall weddings will be canceled. I just think that we don't know at this point. So I think having the flexibility to, again, like rethink what your wedding could look like, whether it is eloping now and then throwing a party later on. And just, I know that it could be a real sadness, but also maybe not putting your whole life on hold just for this one big celebration.
Totally.
I loved Vogue published an article today about how to celebrate your wedding and honeymoon, like from isolation. And I thought it was really well done.
Goosebumps.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is supposed to be a romantic time. So the more that you can do to just embrace the fact that like the reason you were getting married is because you love each other, the better.
In theory, being stuck at home with each other should be a pre-honeymoon.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally. It is for everybody, but it should be.
Do you have weddings scheduled that you were photographing, or was that kind of on hold anyhow due to your maternity leave?
That's a great question. I had put off, this was the 1 month I wasn't supposed to get pregnant for. And so I did hand off 5 weddings to incredibly talented photographers, and I had the most gracious couples. But I did have 2 or 3 more before the baby was due, which have been moved to next spring and like late next fall. So the other thing is, you know, obviously we're instructing people to embrace like midweek weddings, winter weddings, like just really thinking through not using only the spring and fall as your only options. But I will say that my one big piece of advice is that it's completely acceptable to feel sad about it. I don't think that you should beat yourself up. If you're really upset, you know, you've been like envisioning this thing and it's not happening and you have no sense of when it will. So please like make sure you're giving yourself a lot of self-love and care and not feeling like at all guilty for having mixed emotions about the whole thing.
For most people, just saying, I'm going to use the same vendor. So if I had a deposit on a venue or flowers or whatever, I'll hold that deposit. Or people asking for their money back and saying, I'm pretty sure I'm going to go with you, but I don't really know when. So can I have my money back right now?
We, as the wedding industry overall, is not returning deposits. So everyone is doing their best because so much, there's a lot that you spend on sort of like
Yeah.
whether it's reserving another shooter or travel or whatever it is. Overall, I've been really lucky. I've been able to reschedule all of the weddings. So I've been available for the dates except for one. And I'm going to give her deposit back even though contractually I'm not supposed to, because she's so nice. Obviously, like it's human interaction, you know. I don't want to take money that I'm not going to do the work for.
I think this is when partnerships become so important. I mean, we launched, as you know, a bridal collection on our website this few months ago with the knowledge that so many people either buy a pair of earrings or a necklace and wear it even for their wedding unprompted, or contact us and say, hey, I love this. Can I get it in white for my wedding?
Right.
And there was enough of that demand over the past few years that we finally launched bridal with the intent of really pushing it hard April, May, which is obviously, like, you know, on hold. But we did have a few brides reach out to us and say, you know, I bought 4 pairs of white earrings and a white headband and, you know, all these white accessories from you. And, you know, you spend $1,000 and I'm just not going to be wearing it anytime soon. Can I return it? And excuse me, for us, we're lucky because it's not the bulk of our business. Obviously, it's just one of many categories. Right. But our instinct is 100%, yes, you can return it because you probably have much bigger fish to fry right now. And we feel so empathetic for your situation. Yeah. And I think this entire COVID time is a time of feeling empathy and really trying to compromise and sort of give people as much as you can afford to give them.
But I also love what you're saying about, like, don't beat yourself up about feeling sad, because I know at the end of the day, a wedding is, you know, a fluffy, luxurious thing to be able to do that pales in comparison to our health, to our safety and all that. With that said, if someone had told me 2 months before my wedding that I had to cancel my wedding, I would have been ballistic. So 100%. I think you're really allowed to be sad, of course.
I think you're so allowed to be sad. And also, like, it's just a huge life event that even if you're one of those people who imagined it from a very young age, it's still a really pivotal moment in your life. And I think to have the heavy atmosphere of COVID, it's just a really tough emotional battle. So I think it's really critical that people give themselves grace. But I'm glad that you and I are on the same page too in terms of refunds.
Do what you can. It's nice to all be forgiving right now.
All small businesses and
exactly. Okay, and I'm going to ask the next question, but before I do, I just want all the audience to know that if you want to ask a question, you're more than welcome to. There's a Q&A bar at the bottom, which you can just type your question into, and Lizzie and I will make sure that we get Lucy to open it. So do not be shy if you guys have specific questions you'd like to know about. So quickly, before we get into all the maternity stuff that I selfishly need to know about, you have done, for people who follow Lucy on Instagram, she makes beauty in every little daily cinnamon roll that she bakes, flower that she plants. I mean, everything she does is prettier than most people can manage to do. Your Easter table was gorgeous. So what are a few of your favorite tips, and keep them easy because not all of us have your green thumb, but what are the few of your tips that you've been doing to keep your home fresh and happy and not stale during quarantine?
Well, Instagram is so different from reality.
You say that too. I put makeup on once a week for this moment.
Rory, our son, it's like every time we clean a room, he comes and like smashes avocado in the carpet or like does something. He's the ultimate hider of stuff. So I'll find like my prenatal vitamins under the guest room bed. I mean, he's just a little bit of a tornado. But I would say that, you know, one thing that's really important and hard to do, but just makes the whole thing feel better. And this is really boring, but is like a really good clean.
Yeah.
Like the more clean you can keep your space, the more you can make your bed, the more you can treat it like it's a sanctuary or like a living, breathing thing, the better it will feel. It doesn't really matter if you have fresh flowers or nice scents.
Yeah.
Just, I think that tidiness is really important.
We went over to we're staying at our dad's house, who he splits his time in Colorado, so we luckily have a nice house for the four of us, and we've kept it neat. But I went over to our mom's house after our 2 weeks of quarantine, and hers is the difference between neat and clean. It's neat, but it's also very clean.
I was like, your house smells clean.
Wow. Walking into it, you're right. I mean, keeping it fresh, and I know a lot of people who might normally have cleaning help or maybe telling people not to come right now, and they're doing it themselves. A girlfriend of mine has 5 kids and said she was making 21 meals a day herself and making 5 sets of beds and all of that business. So I know it's not easy, especially when you have business and emails to respond to, which we want to ask you about. Right. But I do agree with you that a very clean slate helps.
Helps so much. It really does. Messy bed.
Can you divide and conquer with your husband, Will, or how do you share that responsibility?
I'm really embarrassed to admit that 90% of it falls on Will.
My husband
is so neat, and I am a tornado. So the genetics that my son inherited are completely from me. So it's the most hypocritical advice, but it does make me feel so much better. So I'm really trying to use this time to become more orderly as a person. Yeah, I have a type C personality, which is not conducive to keeping things neat. But I love a good clean. So like a great playlist. Yeah. I listen to Clean Bandit Radio on Pandora, which is
great suggestion.
Love.
Oh, Clean Bandit Radio.
So energized, and you feel like you're dancing around the kitchen as you spray things. And also in the 3rd trimester, I consider it to be exercise.
100%. I'm with you in the 2nd trimester.
Yeah. I'm out of breath, but like I'm going up and down the stairs or dusting something on the ground. So that's been a huge thing. And also just like reorganizing all of our spaces.
Yeah. Totally. Actually, that's a good lead into our next question, which is, are you exercising at where are you? You're
7 months.
7 months. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm entering my 8th month. I find it very confusing.
I know it's misleading. It's really
no idea.
Yeah.
But, again, I was trying to do all the walking. So I try and walk 3 or 4 miles a day. But I love a walk because I put on the How I Built This podcast, or a birthing story now, since I'm really into birth, which is new for this pregnancy. And I just feel like it clears my mind and it makes me feel sane. But it's getting really hot here. So I think I'm going to try and switch over to pregnancy yoga. But I told you guys I've already put on 30 pounds. So I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to do that.
We think you look great.
So you went out for 1 second, but your favorite podcast to listen to while walking is How I Built This?
I love How I Built This. And I feel like critical right now because I feel like I'm definitely fighting business malaise. I feel like the inability to plan for the future has been surprisingly detrimental for my mental state. Mm-hmm. And I always feel really energized by those podcasts. Mm-hmm. I feel like anything is possible. So I don't know if you guys have listened, but
love it. And I mean, so many of the stories are all about people who suffered major setbacks before they found their success.
Love it.
Gives you perspective that we all need right now, because if it were easy, everybody would be doing it, and it's not supposed to be easy. But it's hard to learn that.
Totally.
So well said.
Business malaise, because that's something that like we kind of think about a lot. Like it's kind of like go big or go home right now. It's like pivot, innovate. Everyone's talking about like how will your business change during this time, but there's also something to be said for just like survive.
Totally.
So I'm wondering, have you taken this time to like give yourself a little break? Are you taking this time to rethink your business? Talk to us about the Lucy Cuneo brand and business during this time.
I would say that a lot of it has been unintentional, but because again, I felt like as someone who's traditionally worked from home, even though we've had an office for the last 2 years and we don't anymore because we were planning to move. But anyway, so we've consolidated it into our house. We're staying here. It was a surprisingly large transition mentally for me to not be able to plan into any kind of future. And I just found, again, that balance between like trying to think through what's important to do today for the business versus like just surviving, and like what if Will and I both get sick, and like what do we do with Rory, and just like really obsessively thinking about sort of the what if scenarios. I just found it really, really hard. So one thing that I did last week, which I feel has helped me tremendously, is review my 5-year plan. And I would say I only function as a business person if I know where I want to end up. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I lose all sense of motivation. And so really, and like those are conversations that Will and I have together, and I'm sure you guys have them together all the time. But I think that for me, reminding myself of the long-term goals, and I'm not talking about like next fall, really like 3, 4, 5 years, like set me in motion to wish to get the small things done to get there again. I just needed to jog my memory, because otherwise I'm finding the whole thing really overwhelming.
That's wonderful feedback. And I think sometimes Lizzie and I don't do that. We think about like the short to medium term.
How could you not?
We are in such denial about our inability to identify what our 5-year goal is.
It's really hard.
That's a really great challenge that Claire and Erica from Of a Kind, who we spoke to last week, said that in the first week of January, every year for the last 10 years, they would sit down and identify their year-long goals for the business, but it couldn't be small things. It had to be really ambitious, big picture things. So whether your planning time frame is a year or 5 years, it sounds like having that to-do list. And I had an amazing advice from a mentor once years ago, which I actually shared with my team only in the past year, but now it's an exercise that everybody does, which is at all times to have a piece of paper taped to your wall, taped to your computer, whatever it is, with like 4 short-term or medium-term goals that you can keep, know that you can check off the list, but keep them there. And then 4 medium to long-term goals that are much more aspirational, that will keep you kind of going and focused in the way that you're saying. Yeah. And I feel like you're right. When you lose those, you sort of start to tailspin, because look, if all of us are only waking up to answer the 100 emails in our inbox each day, we will go crazy. Mm-hmm. And certainly we all have that requirement as well as entrepreneurs. And I've had some days like that during quarantine when it feels like the fire drills on a daily basis are so big that I completely have lost sight of like what we're working towards.
100%
during a time like this.
And also, I think everyone is going through that. So I hope, again, it's like, give yourself the grace.
Sure. Totally. And we're fortunate to be figuring it out without having a kid at home. I know you have a toddler in the house. So when you and Will are, maybe these conversations are happening at night, but if they're in the afternoon when you're trying to tackle these conversations with Will, who you work with, do you have any tips for the double working moms out there who are dealing with childcare and also with working from home right now?
Yeah, I think it has been surprisingly hard, because Will, I would not have any business without Will. I think that he loves being sort of behind the scenes, but he is such an analytical thinker. And he truly has like pushed every single project out the door. I'm so grateful for him. And I think it's really hard because Rory right now commands more attention than we ever could have possibly imagined. Like, we cannot get a word in. We're working on his interrupting, which is, again, my genetics. Inherited all from me. So I think that we're trying to set up the morning so we exhaust him. So both of us will all hang out as a family. We'll make breakfast. We'll dance around the kitchen. We'll go for a swim in our above ground pool. Really get him like super, super tired. And then go for a bike ride, maybe like around the neighborhood, just whatever it is, play outside on our porch. And then we'll put him in front of a movie. So he will watch a new Pixar movie in the afternoon after we've done art, etc. So we feel like we've given him attention, and now he gets some screen time. And I know that that's like not an ideal babysitter. And there are moms out there who are doing a way better job than I am, but it distracts him, and we're just able to get a little mental space in so that we both know what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, totally. I've spoken to so many girlfriends who are like, of all times, this is the time when some screen time is acceptable, because especially as working moms,
you need to keep your sanity.
Yeah, well, not only your sanity, but a lot of people need to keep their paychecks. So if you are fortunate enough to be working remotely, then I think it's important to be able to do something where you can actually get your job done well.
Totally. And I think that play between exhausting him and really focusing in, knowing that like that's not my great working time anyway, and having time as a family unit, and then going in and saying like, we're going to put him here. Or honestly, like I'm very lucky. He is, in at times very independent too. So he'll play by himself a lot, but, we really try and make sure that we are spending time with him every day.
Do you and Will divide and conquer? Do you say that because you have to share parenting responsibility, do you say like, look, my inbox is overflowing. I have a deadline to get back to these 3 brides.
Yes.
I need 2 hours, but I promise you tomorrow I'll give you those 2 hours back. Do you kind
yes,
of?
Totally. Yes. And so Will was, when we landed in quarantine, Will had a big website. Mm-hmm. So my husband Will also builds websites on the side. And he was working from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. every morning for 10 nights. And so then I would wake up with Rory and make sure that I was so he could sleep, and then we would spend some time together. So it's just, we're just finding the balance. Yeah. I would say that as a creative person, my inspiration just strikes me sometimes and I want to write something and I just scurry off. And I'm so lucky that he's really supportive of that. Because I can't imagine how hard it would be if you felt like you were having a lightning moment and then you couldn't execute on it. That would be.
We have this question for a little bit later in our conversation, but I think it seems relevant right now. I'm a very, very type A person. I get to the bottom of my inbox every
All my best friends are.
I get back to the bottom of my inbox. I manage I've learned to delegate to our team of 12, but I also do not mind getting my hands dirty and doing a lot of work. And so moments like this, I am kind of 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. working really hard to the point where, everybody's like, Catherine, you got to give yourself a break right now. But I've had a really big concern around my first baby, which is due in July. And originally, in the absence of COVID, I was thinking, well, I'm going to have a great plan. I'm going to be able to put all these great plans in place where each employee knows how they can take my responsibilities and share them. My bookkeeper's going to step up, all these different things. And now, who knows? I'll be lucky if I even get back into the office before I go out on maternity leave. Right. So can you talk a little bit about both with your first child and then expecting a second child? What were any best practices you did to not let your business completely fall by the wayside when it comes to answering emails? Or maybe you did just say,
no, I didn't.
12 weeks, I'm taking it off and I'm not going to look at my email, but I probably don't have that.
I wrote an article for Architectural Digest from the hospital, and then I
Catherine is going to be sending running payroll.
Totally, just keep going with that. And then we photographed a wedding 5 weeks after Rory was born, so I hadn't even had a postpartum checkup, and it was on a plane. But it was a really big career wedding for us, and it was totally debilitating. So I have set more boundaries for myself this time. Mm-hmm. I will say that for me personally, a couple months after Rory was born, I hit an energy level that I didn't know was like humanly possible. And I'm really hoping I get it again.
Did it burn you out or did it inspire you?
I was the most productive I've ever been.
Wow. That's incredible.
I was just like, I was a force to be reckoned with. And it only lasted for a couple months, but it was like a hormone surge or something. And so I reassure people who are especially like first time moms that I think that if you are inspired by your business and obviously so excited about being a mom, I think that you naturally get this newfound energy and like newfound space. Obviously not everybody, has that. And so again, I think it's really about identifying like what you're working toward, and then how it's valuable to you, and whether or not, it's like worth missing a breastfeeding session because you're writing this because it's going to end up, getting you closer to your goals. And I think that it's okay to want to still be like a successful businesswoman and a mom. And I think that the only kind of mom pressure I've ever received is like working too hard. And I'm really lucky again that like my husband doesn't feel that that's true. So I just think that like you will find a balance. But I wish that I had taken a little more time for myself after the first one, and I've carved it out for this one. I will say that we were supposed to have my mom and stuff down, and we're not going to have any support this time. And that is terrifying, but also like kind of exciting because I feel like we'll be forced into maternity leave, and maybe that'll be like the biggest blessing,
right?
Of personally of this period of time.
I do think so many families have said that like the ability to really bond with your husband or who's normally at work all the time, or with your kids who are at daycare, like that family time is special. And
So
if you get past all the tough parts about right now, some people's jobs are not secure, some people's health is not secure.
Right.
And so to the extent that you can manage those things, which are out of our control,
Right.
I think that there are silver linings, which we have to try to pause and really appreciate right now.
We never would have had this time with our son.
Yeah.
Like this has been amazing in some, like obviously I would totally trade in no COVID, but if you're looking for silver linings, like the fact that we get this time as a family of 3.
Yeah.
I think,
and before you have another baby.
Right. And you guys like spending the time as a romantic couple, because all the spontaneity.
It's only a great joke because Lizzie and I, we'll totally marry each other in our next life.
But really, like trying to look for the good in the isolation, I think is really helpful mentally. But wait,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say like 2 quick resources, just circling back to people wanting goals and all these things. Yes. So great resources for me. I don't know if you guys have ever looked at Marie Forleo. Marie Forleo.
Okay, I'm going to put this in our chat so everybody
can. So Marie, and then Forleo. She is not everyone's cup of tea, but I would say like if you ever are looking for a motivational YouTube to get you off your bottom, she's fabulous. Everything that comes out of her mouth is like a nugget of wisdom. And I took her B School course a couple years ago, maybe 2014 actually, and it changed my life.
Wow.
It taught me to think as a business lady, considering I'd never done anything like that before. And then for anybody who's not a type A personality, the bullet journal method has also changed my life. So really having all of the things I need in one place is very helpful for my brain. And as someone who before having a baby had almost a photographic memory where I could like, if you told me your birth date and your phone number, I could remember it forever.
Wow.
I now cannot remember anything, like anything at all. And it's so upsetting. It's like the most upsetting part of the whole thing. So having everything in one place has been instrumental to any kind of productivity for me.
I love that.
I'm going to look into both of those.
And I think Allison's question about short and medium term goal examples, one thing that personally, as I've done that exercise on an annual basis, I really try to diversify them. Okay. So you asked sort of what does that necessarily include? And to your point, Allison, I actually try specifically to have some that are revenue based, to have some that are more maybe social media based. Like I really want to better build out our brand voice. I do try to make it as tangible as possible. So that's probably a bad example. So some of them are actual tangible things. Launch Bridal on our website before the end of 2020.
Right.
Or make a new hire that we didn't previously have, or identify a mentor who's going to coach Lizzie 4 times throughout the course of the year. So I try to make things that are extremely tangible and not so vague that you can never actually achieve it. And then I try to make some that are truly hard, like hit 3 million in revenue if we're only at 2.2 million in revenue, so that it really keeps us saying like, we actually have to think out of the box to have a full 30% increase. Mm-hmm. It's not just getting 3 extra wholesale accounts. It's like thinking about a whole new revenue stream that's going to get us there. And that might be a longer term goal, but one that actually motivates us in a higher capacity. When you think about those goals, do you have other examples?
I mean, I agree with you that it needs to be tangible. And for me, I'm not good at just like a vague thing, like design a bestseller. Like we'll throw that around a lot in the office. Like what's the bestseller? But like it's an impossible question to answer. And so especially when I'm thinking about the creative aspects, and I'm fortunate to have a design team that I work with, and we will literally like talk together about like, okay, let's develop a belt program where we have different belts all available in different colors. This is something that we've been talking about for a while. And you can like mix and match the belt with a buckle or something like that. It's a very tangible thing where we're like, we know the exact objective of this project. It's not a project we're going to be able to do overnight or even like in the next month. It might take 6 months, but we'll know the real tangible meaty objective. And I think that helps us a lot.
I think you're right to say, and the more specific can be, the better. We are working on a book, and I've been working on my sample chapters forever, and I have a mental block. I don't know what. Every day I think I'm going to work on them, and I don't. And so I think getting those kinds of things done because you understand that, like, if you get the book deal, then it's a great, brand solidifier, and you're able to really put everything in one concrete place. Those kinds of things are really, really, really helpful personally for me.
I think the tricky thing right now too is like, I have been spending my days doing the stuff I need to do first, like getting the really urgent emails, or Catherine and I are shipping e-commerce from our dad's house in Pennsylvania right now since our studio is not open. So like, I'll tackle e-commerce,
but that's like not our job description at all, because we have a whole team who ships.
I never do e-commerce. Like, our team is way better at e-commerce than I am, but I'll tackle e-commerce because I know it has to ship out, and then I'll try and get to those bigger picture things. And I will say it's really challenging when you're in the nitty gritty to then step back and like write a chapter of a book or think about designing, because the designing thing is really where my energy should be focused. But when you spend 6 hours doing tasks, you become exhausted, and it's really hard to do both. So part of this right now is also just like giving yourself a break and saying like, maybe the belts are going to wait a month, whatever it is.
Or really organizing your time to say, on Mondays, I'm going to fill e-commerce. And on Tuesdays, I'm just going to let all that e-commerce sit until Wednesday. And on Tuesdays, I'm going to put my playlist on. I'm going to light my candle, whatever is your creative moment in your house right now. And I'm really going to attack my to-do list that's much more sort of esoteric than task oriented, because I agree, my least efficient days are when I'm trying to throw both of those spaghetti piles against the wall, because nothing gets done very well.
It's impossible. I do think that is where the bullet journal is really helpful, because it helps you identify what your sort of month goals are and then shift your daily schedule so that you're achieving those.
Oh, that's great.
And I can't switch back and forth, but I can't go from editing a wedding to writing a chapter of a book about home.
We did a great manager offsite with a half of the management level of our team last year. And I'll put the information on the chat as well, because this particular HR consultant really talked to us about like, what are the things that really distract you and your team during the day. And we all decided that context switching, whether that's interrupting each other in the office such that you're context switching from writing a detailed email to talking to somebody, or you're doing it to yourself. Like Lizzie's really good when she's designing, she closes her email inbox because she says, otherwise I'm going to look up 20 times and respond halfway to an email when I'm actually supposed to be doing something else. So she will always tell me, Catherine, you're context switching right now. Just get one thing done in completion before you start another. But actually, really quickly before we move on, and we're going to get more to pregnancy, the question that Carrie Spears, sorry, I'm not supposed to mention names. We just got a great question about about what you would prioritize. So if you're a new mom and if you're the only person running your business, and obviously the list of deliverables is always more than any one person can do, would you think about prioritizing client relations, blogging, Instagram, collaborations? What were some of the things that you prioritized, Lucy, when your time was less than your ability?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say it's always such a frustrating experience because you really do want to do it all. And I think this is the year that I learned that I do have a bandwidth that isn't as big as I thought it was, especially with the hormone thing. So I always prioritize my clients first, right? Okay, so it's really critical. I think for us too, where we're managing two businesses, I can't not hand in a wedding and then put myself up on Instagram, like flaunting around my house. Like I have to be really sensitive about that and make sure that my clients feel so loved on and looked after, and like they're my top priority, which they are. They are the ones who are keeping us afloat. They're amazing. I love them, you know, and I want them to feel looked after. So people first. And then I would say this has been an interesting area for us because I don't think I have the bandwidth to blog every day and write a sample chapter, but I really want to do them all. And through not deciding, I'm not doing any of them. So I think the small steps first, like maybe just changing, for me, like changing what a blog post means so that I'm putting something up every day and like with one photo and a couple different things, or really just even putting like an unfinished thought out there rather than an SEO title. Like this is how I'm actually feeling and this is what I'm going through and, you know, this is what I'm looking at, and it's not complete and like tied up in a pretty bow. So changing the definition, I think is good for this period of time. And I think that people are receptive to that kind of human vulnerability. And then I would say prioritize the thing that you think is going to get you I know I said 3 things. I'm not really answering the question, but I think for us,
So I think it's helpful for all of us.
okay, I think, we look at the book as like this big career step if we can get the book deal. So that has to be a top priority. And so it comes maybe before blogging for us. So whatever is going to get you sort of to your long-term goal faster, even if it's not quite what you want to be working on, I would say is what I would try and prioritize. Mm-hmm. And then I would throw almost like Instagram collaborations out the window. If you're really deciding between blogging, Instagram collaborations, and client relations, clients and blogging, and like trying to strike a true tone. I think Instagram collaborations are so tricky right now. Mm-hmm. People hate them. So, I think anytime that you are going on as a sponsored whatnot, I don't know. I just think that like for us, it always bombs. I think that it has to feel really authentic. Yeah. And even if it is like, maybe I feel badly because like selling at this time is weird. So I would like, unless that's like your sole source of income, I would try and really develop like a brand thesis with your website before taking on promoting other people's products.
I think that's great advice. Okay. I was just going to say that when we started like our social media, when we started, first of all, social media isn't anything like it is today, but it was also like so disconnected and so all over the place. And what you're saying about the clients being the lifeline, Catherine and I had to make that our first priority, because if people weren't going to buy the jewelry, then like, what the heck is the point of having like a really cute curated Instagram post or whatever it is.
Right.
So I think that to answer this question that we just received, it's so important to make sure that you're first doing what's going to get people coming back. And that's the client relations and making sure they feel happy. You're going to get good word of mouth, suggestions to other people, all of that. And then as you can grow and delegate, our social media really improved when we actually hired a social media person who does graphics and mailers and social media and all of that. And like,
who conceived of Creative Women's Coffee.
Exactly. So prior to that, it's like, yeah, we wanted to have our hand in that pot, and we did, but we didn't necessarily do it well. And
right.
Or maybe we did it well enough to get by while we prioritize the stuff.
But but it's important to like not be hard on yourself for not doing that well. I think it's important to do well what you know is going to like get people coming back, and that's pleasing your clients, or making sure your retailers are happy in our case, or making sure someone receives the earrings that they ordered in time and they're happy with them.
Totally. Huge.
Totally.
Really well
Let's talk about the birth plan, if we're allowed. So for people who are just joining, or just to kind of circle back around, Lucy is in her 8th month. Lizzie and I are around 25 weeks. And we selfishly want to hear from Lucy because she's already been through this before. But obviously, it's a first for everybody to be pregnant during Corona. And Lucy did a great article, which we can also share on Vogue.com about 2 weeks ago, about how she never thought she would be thinking about giving birth anywhere other than a hospital. And obviously, your thinking has evolved. So to the extent you feel comfortable, can you share at a high level for our audience? And if there's fellow moms out there, please feel free to chat us about your advice or resources as we go, but we'd love to hear what your experience is right now, Lucy.
I think I just want to say that whatever I say, I think one thing that's really scary about putting your birth plan out there, I just don't want it to influence anybody, or like for anybody to feel any pressure, or like because I choose something, it means that I think that they're making the wrong choice.
Right.
I think that one thing I learned early on, right in college, I went through this really intense vegan phase. When I tell people I was a vegan, they were like really offended, because I think that they felt, and it was really controversial at the time, like compared to how it is now, but they felt like because I was a vegan, I thought they should be a vegan. And like that was not the case at all. I was just so excited to be on my own journey. So COVID has been the first pregnancy I had. I didn't want to know anything about birth. I like literally walked in and didn't even know. I had never taken a breathing class. I just wanted to get the epidural, get plugged in, get the baby out, go home, and I think that really worked well for me. And I think there's nothing I would change about that. It was great. I think that COVID forced me to I'm like someone who deals with anxiety through reading. So I did a ton of research about birth, and made me rethink about what this second experience could look like.
Mm-hmm.
And I really fell in love with this Millie Brown from England. I think that's her name. I'm actually really bad at names, but the Positive Birth Book is what it's called, and I can share the link. You can only get it on iBooks, because it's not even on the Kindle, and it's like $40 on Audible, where I think it's like $8 on the iBook.
Okay.
But she just made birth sound like so normal, and she's not a crunchy hippie, which if you are, also awesome. I've also been there. So like, to each her own. But she just made it feel like it wasn't this like big controversial thing to give birth outside of the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I was trying to get in touch with my doctor, and I couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And the nurses were dismissing me and telling me to check the CDC website. And I've already memorized it, lady. I know. And, I was already talking about symptomless cases, like at the beginning of March, and like what they were going to do about that. And I was annoying them so much, for them. So I think for me, I just wanted to look at like what other options could be, so I didn't have to expose myself and the baby to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started reading about home birth, and then I found this Medium Ground, which is a birth center, which is basically where you go and give birth with midwives.
Mm-hmm.
And there are neonatal nurses there, so they have a ton of medical equipment. If in this specific birth center, I think everyone should do their own research. It does mean that you're going in with no pain meds. I've joked that Stacy, our mutual friend, might have to come with me if Will can't, because she's like the only one who can handle me screaming, and with no judgment. So I just switched to the birth center today.
Wow.
Which is
It's exciting that you have
and this
plan.
group here is here to witness that for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, I felt right for me. And I think that like in your gut, knowing where you're going to feel the safest and the most relaxed is really, really, really personal. I would say that 99% of my friends are giving birth in the hospital. And I will say, so I'm on a couple moms groups on WhatsApp. It's been anxiety producing for some, awesome for others. But a couple of our moms have given birth in like New York City, in high COVID areas. And they say that the minute you go into labor, it's the last thing you're thinking about. Even if you've got a face mask on, like you're just getting the baby out,
Right.
and it's just not top of mind.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm really talking a lot, so you can.
It's so
we're grasping every word.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have to say, Catherine and I had done very little research.
Yeah.
Like this is everything for us.
Okay. So really critical things. All the hospitals, from what I understand, are low on supplies. So stocking up on like your postpartum care kit in a day when you can't just run to CVS or Duane Reade and get your pads or whatever the things you need are. I have a list of all that stuff, which I can share. I think those kinds of things are really critical. And then also understanding that even if you're not in a high COVID area, the hospital is stressed and spread thin. So knowing that you should and can advocate for yourself is really, really important.
And I think for anybody, whether you're pregnant or not, we've had so many conversations about being your own health advocate, especially right now when resources are low. It's crucial always, but it's really crucial right now. And so whether that means having a relative help you ask questions or remember questions for you, or help bounce out, make sure you role play before you talk to the doctor so you don't miss anything. But I do think being your health advocate is really important.
And I know there was some conversation, Lucy, with hospitals not letting companions in, which has since been overturned in New York, thank goodness. But with the birthing center, I assume Will will be there with you.
Yeah, for us it's really tricky because if we're not in quarantine, I'm really worried about COVID. Will doesn't have he'd kill me for saying this. He's always thinking of making up. He doesn't have like the most amazing lungs, and so I really don't want him to get it. He's my best friend. Like, it's so selfish. I just want to keep him with me forever. And so I really am trying like not to get sick, not to get the baby sick, not to get him sick, not to get Rory sick. Like all of us are, but like maybe I'm being a little too worried about it. And so I don't know whether or not we would have a babysitter for Rory, in which case Will would stay here and I would do it alone. But the birth center today really said, please don't do that. Please bring him. Because they feel, so basically when you're giving birth, you release this chemical hormone called oxytocin. The synthetic version is Pitocin, which is the one they give you when they're inducing labor. If there are any doctors in the chat, they probably are rolling their eyes because I don't have it completely correct, but that hormone is really fueled by your love for each other and like that safety, that sense of, okay, I'm in a good place, like I feel calm, and that's what like has your body go into labor. So the first time I went into labor, I went in the middle of the night. I was having the most intense labor, and the minute I got to the hospital, I got stage fright, and I couldn't go into labor anymore. I just couldn't do it. It's kind of like going to the bathroom in front of other people. I just don't. I'm English. I can't. So I think that your husband or your partner, whoever that is, whoever you feel close to, helps you get that sense of security more than anybody else, and that's why it's so critical to have that person there. But apparently they have to leave pretty shortly after birth in a lot of places.
Right.
So quickly to address that, if you're like, I'm talking so much.
Who's advocating on doulas? So is the doula redundant with the birth center, or would you have a doula in addition to the birth center?
You could totally have a doula in addition to the birth center. A doula is really there to help you feel super, super relaxed. And if the midwives are dealing with like a ton of births, or, they're not clinical, but they're more like in and out and practical. And your doula is more of like an oxytocin support. So someone who might be like tickling your head or making you feel really engaged, reminding you why you chose to do this natural birth thing, like helping you get into different positions, helping you with stretches, or, helping you through a C-section that's unexpected, or it's basically just someone who is an unwavering support, who might not have the same, like for Will, the first time, he got super flustered. He wasn't planning on watching me deliver the baby, and the nurse was like shoving him at the bottom of my leg, and he said, watch the whole thing, to my regret. And, I think it was really, it stunned him. And a doula has seen so many births. I think that they are really quite grounding. So I would be very supportive if that's something that you feel like is an option for you.
I've also heard a lot of people saying that with this only having one companion in the room kind of thing, people are putting their doulas on FaceTime, which I think is so cool, because like then you still have this voice of reason, because I know, you watch the movies and like the woman like wants to strangle her husband because she's not doing the right things. But like, as you said, the doula has seen a million births. So having someone, even if it's on a screen, who has been there, done that, I feel like could be really comforting.
I completely agree. Have you guys looked into having a doula?
Well, we had started to a little bit, and then we got in this pickle where we've been in Delaware or Pennsylvania for quarantine, and have started to now see an OBGYN in Delaware.
Right.
I kind of don't know where we're delivering at this point. We're not till the end of July, so we think it will be back up in New York. But right now we're seeing an OB here as if we're going to do the whole thing here.
Sure.
So we don't have a doula right now.
Right. And I also don't know if, as you're saying, if we can have her in the room, but I do love the idea of having one person in the room and then having FaceTime, or even also all the prep up to the actual 48 hours in the hospital. We're almost out of time. We have about 5 minutes left, and we might get cut off. So I want to make sure we get this answered. Okay. Lucy, do you have good resources for finding a doula?
Okay. Resources for finding a doula. I honestly did all of mine through word of mouth, which I know is not very helpful, but I know that Hatch Collection just launched a series of resources for people who are dealing with COVID, and I'm sure that they probably have a doula resource on there. I found mine through, a birth center. I asked a bunch of friends. Yoga studios probably know of a doula. And then also just like Charleston doula, Googling. And I know that's not the most helpful, but they usually do have reviews. So I will try and think of more and post them on my stories.
Amazing. Awesome. So in a little bit of a lighter note, because at the end of the day, and we want to know what's inspiring you. Okay. Our baby showers are on permahold. So just assume we also know nothing about the product side of being a mom. Are there any baby brands or baby products or maternity clothes, anything that you're shopping small or we have to have before we actually give birth, whether it's your favorite?
And I have to chime into this. Also, if there's anything that you're like, don't buy this, because like I feel like we get flooded with like suggestions and all this stuff, and I'm like, my apartment is not big, so if there's something where, like, this thing took up so much room and we used it for a week and then we shoved it in the closet, please tell me now.
That was basically like every appliance for us, like the Mamaroo, the Rockababy, whatever, which has been recalled. It's not what it's called. Everything with Rory only worked for a short period of time. Just when we thought we'd figured it out, he would get over it. We are going to try the Snoo this time. I know that you can rent them, which is so awesome. I've been instructed not to buy one because I think it is so cumbersome in a small space particularly, but they're just a lot to store and you might only use it for a couple weeks. You can rent them month to month. I hear they're amazing. For me, people say that a wipe warmer is not necessary. It was like the only thing that kept Rory from, like, he would not handle anything cold. So it was essential for us. So I think it's very baby to baby, which is not the best answer, but I really didn't like dealing with button up and down stuff in the first, say, like, especially like 5 days of being home from the hospital. They have the umbilical cord, which is still in the process of falling off. And you don't want to snap anything over it. So any of the onesies that are like kimonos that tie on the side and just are the most minimal work, I think is really, really essential. And you can even get like these zip up side ones from Old Navy that are 100% cotton, and they're great. Honestly, you're plowing through that stuff. I would say don't buy a lot of newborn stuff. Rory never fit into newborn. He was always the 0 to 3 months to start with. And then I'm trying to think of what else is.
What are you wearing are you investing in anything right now that you can wear?
I am. I spent the whole day yesterday looking at what I'm trying to like narrow it down to what I feel is really essential. I would say you want to feel like a woman. so sexy pajamas, just stuff that makes you feel like you're still yourself, because you won't for a period of time, is really essential. So for me, like looking into lovely pajamas, lovely nursing bras, because you're going to be living in them anyway, even like loose linen dresses that I can unbutton. And you know, when you get home from the hospital, you're like leaking milk and you're wearing a diaper and you just feel so robbed of like all feminine mystique. And so anything that you can do to make yourself feel pampered, even like stocking up on face masks when you're breastfeeding, I would do all of that stuff and really prioritize yourself, because your sanity leads to the baby's sanity. Like, it just feeds the whole family. And the baby grows out of stuff so quickly. So I think that's really critical. And I can, I've been compiling these lists, so I'll send them to you guys and I'll put them up on stories and our websites and whatever. And I know
we'll take any lists that Lucy gets. Put it on. We're going to republish this on our blog, so this video will be saved.
Perfect.
Underneath it, all supporting links and lists that Lucy gives.
Perfect, because I've really been working hard on my list.
And for the people who have given us amazing advice throughout this conversation, I might copy and paste a little bit of that too. There's a few books on here that seem amazing. So I need to up my reading game and make sure that I'm learning a little bit before late July. But Lucy, thank you so much. This has been
thanks so much.
I
love
like a lot.
Stocking up on things now, whether it's like postpartum or the face masks now. Like, I think I'm like so naive thinking that I'm actually gonna have time to order stuff on the internet after the baby's here. So now
and I think it also just helps you mentally prepare. And also there are about to be a lot of shortages. I think the peak of shortages was in July. So I would order even like diapers and stuff, and I will pull those resources together. And then the one last thing I would say is just like setting up your sanctuary. So making sure that you have like a bedroom that also has a changing station for the baby. The nursery is like almost useless in the first couple months. I mean, really the baby's like in your bedroom. So the more you can have the space to just feel like everything that you need is right there, so you don't have to get up and down a lot, it's really critical.
I'm so glad you say that, because our planned nursery is currently Peter, my husband, and my closet.
Yes, good.
New York living. Yeah, New York living. All spring, our plan was to like convert it from a closet to a nursery, but now we're in Pennsylvania in the middle of the woods, so that plan has gone out the window. So we keep joking like the baby's going to be here and it's still going to be our closet. We're going to have
you don't even need it. You don't
figure it out in the beginning. Exactly.
No, but I commend you guys for having such a wonderful spirit. Like, this must be really hard for your first pregnancy, and you guys
I think ignorance is bliss.
And we're so lucky to have each other. We're going through it together. Lucy knows we really planned to have staggered pregnancies, and as it turns out, they're 5 days apart. So we were talking about this morning, it's like a blessing, even though we're a little bit terrified about both being out of the office at the same time. It's a blessing to have someone to like think about it with.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's amazing.
So before we time out, everybody, thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much.
Lucy, thank you for your time. And next Thursday, we'll see you for our next up Creative Women's Coffee with Jessie Randall. Thanks, Lucy.
Okay, you guys, lots of fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.